The house was a dream, right? 8 months of my life, every spare dime from my savings, every weekend, poured into restoring my grandfather's old farmstead, the one we called the Whisperwood place because of the ancient maples. I was finally sanding the floorboards in the kitchen, feeling that sense of deep, bone-tired satisfaction, when the yellow notice arrived. It wasn't a bill. It was a death sentence. $94,700. Outstanding dues since 1971. I just stood there, staring at that number, realizing that was literally 53 years before I was even born, and my heart just absolutely plummeted into my work boots. This wasn't some gentle reminder from the Stonegate Community Alliance either. This was a full-blown declaration of war delivered by a woman named Ilara Thorne. And let me tell you, Ilara didn't do introductions. She just materialized at my driveway in a spotless obsidian SUV, wielding a clipboard and an official-looking violation ledger that screamed, "I take myself way, way too seriously." She marched past me, past the beautiful cedar fence I'd spent 3 weekends building by hand, and whipped out a measuring tape like she was disarming a bomb. Then announced, 8 inches over the prescribed height, Mr. Hayes, a threat to the community aesthetic. 8 inches. Like my fence was some kind of rural insurrection. But here's where the chills really set in. Ilara started talking about my grandfather, Silas Hayes, like they'd shared coffee every morning. Silas always did have a disregard for structure, didn't he? She said with this tight, knowing smirk that didn't reach her eyes. How did she know his name, let alone his personality quirks? Silas passed when I was 12. And all I really remembered was him teaching me how to use a level and calling me sport. Yet Ilara was rattling off specific details about my restoration. The rare heirloom tomato seeds I'd found in the basement and planted, unauthorized heritage gardening, apparently, and the exact shade of sea green I'd painted the shutters to match the 1940s photos, the wrong hue for Stonegate standards, she insisted. While she was lecturing, she shoved a thick itemized ledger into my hands, listing the dues and the astronomical fines. It read like a menu from hell, penned by someone with a deep, visceral grudge against my family name. 30 days, she warned, to pay up or face foreclosure. 30 days to somehow cough up nearly $100,000 I absolutely did not have. Not after buying the house and all the materials. The absurdity of it was suffocating, but what truly terrified me was the photocopy she produced next. An HOA charter dated 1971, right there at the bottom, Silas Hayes' signature. It was identical to the one on his will, that distinctive loop on the capital H. That precise way he crossed his lowercase atix. It was either the most stunning act of penmanship consistency in history or a magnificent calculated forgery. As I stared at it, she just flashed that satisfied smirk, the kind of look that said, "I've been saving this ace for years, just waiting for the perfect moment to play it." The surveillance started the next morning, turning my peaceful farmhouse into a fortress of paranoia. Ilara planted compliance signs around the public mailboxes, bold and aggressive, screaming my address like I was some kind of neighborhood pariah. I tried to fight back with my own elegant signs, historic preservation in progress, but Ilara always escalated faster. She hit my contractor, Dave, with nuisance calls questioning his permits and liability insurance until he called me, sounding genuinely spooked, to say he had to pull his crew. "Look, man, I've got a business to protect," he apologized. "And this whole thing is just too weird." Then the digital shaming began. Edited videos appeared on the community app. Suspicious activity at non-compliant property. Clips of me talking to Dave about fence placement, edited to look like a heated, aggressive argument. The comments section instantly became a virtual lynch mob, with strangers debating my anger management issues and whether I should be allowed to live near families with young children. It was psychological warfare, meticulously orchestrated, making me feel isolated and unstable in my own home. But the breaking point, the moment I felt truly violated, was finding thermal imagery posted online, showing the heat signature of my house at night, with speculation about unauthorized electrical work based on energy usage patterns. This wasn't just an HOA complaint. This was high-tech stalking rooted in pure, unadulterated malice. But the darkness always reveals the light, right? My first real glimmer of hope came not from a lawyer, but from Mrs. Clara Albright, the elderly woman with the prize-winning lilac bushes 2 doors down. I'd barely waved to her, but one evening, I watched her through the kitchen window, frail but steady, quietly replacing one of my historic preservation signs that had been torn down. She didn't seek credit or conversation. She just secured the sign with a small garden spade, brushed her hands, and walked back inside. A small, silent act of defiance that meant the world to me. Then came the second anonymous message, a brittle index card tucked under the door. It simply said, Juniper Creek, 1971. Ask Clara. She remembers what Alara won't say out loud. I went to Clara the next day, not with legal papers, but with a thermos of tea. I sat in her immaculate sunroom and she finally opened up, pulling out a faded shoebox of photos. Alara is punishing you for a tragedy, dear, Clara began, her voice soft but firm. It has nothing to do with that silly fence. Clara confirmed Silas was the leader of the local farmers' resistance against the original Stonegate development in the early 70s. He won, he kept the land rural, but his success had a brutal, unintended consequence. Clara showed me a foreclosure notice and photos of the Ward family farm auction. The Ward family, that was Alara's original name. Silas's successful legal delays, Clara explained, created an atmosphere of financial uncertainty that had destroyed the Ward's ability to secure a critical refinancing loan. They lost everything, including the little tenant house they were renting, my house. Then Clara showed me the most devastating picture, a 10-year-old Alara. Not Grace, but Alara Ward, standing right where my cedar fence is now, clinging to the front porch railing with tears streaming down her face, while her father stood beside her, defeated, holding a for sale sign. She refused to leave for an hour, Clara whispered. Silas's fight for principle destroyed her childhood. This house, your restoration, it's not a house to her. It's a living monument to her family's humiliation. The whole scheme clicked into place, the debt, the forgery, the personal attacks. It wasn't about the HOA. It was a carefully constructed, multi-decade plan for revenge, designed to make the grandson of Silas Hayes lose the exact same property Alara lost as a child. With Clara's support and the evidence from the attic, I'd found Silas's real documents confirming his agricultural exemption and non-membership. We formed a truth committee. We petitioned the city council, and an emergency hearing was scheduled. The town hall was packed, standing room only, not just with neighbors, but with reporters. Alara and her slick lawyer, Ms. Dana Vance, presented first, using all their polished charts, graphs, and the forged documents to paint me as a reckless vandal destroying their precious community aesthetic. It looked persuasive, I'll admit, but I had the truth. I stood up with Silas's original anti-HOA petition and Clara's photos. I introduced Clara, who, with the steady conviction of someone who had lived and breathed that history, looked directly at the council and said, I personally signed the petition with Silas Hayes. He never joined that association. This young man's grandfather fought to keep this land free. And Alara Thorne is using fraud to pursue a half-century-old grudge? You could have heard a pin drop, but the final blow, the cinematic moment, was when I placed Silas's non-member document next to Alara's HOA brochure, which prominently featured Silas's old community barn-raising photo under the fabricated caption, Silas Hayes, founding board member. The contradiction was so blatant, so disgustingly hypocritical. The room erupted in gasps. It was too much for Alara, she snapped. Her carefully constructed composure shattered. Jumping to her feet, she shrieked, tears streaming, pointing an accusatory, trembling finger at me. You don't understand what he did. My father lost everything because of his self-righteous delays. I was 10 years old when I had to leave this house, and I swore to God I wouldn't let his family profit from the same land where mine suffered. Ms. Vance tried to restrain her, but Alara was gone, decades of bitterness finally boiling over into a public, devastating confession. The council's decision was immediate and absolute. The chairman ruled that Alara Thorne held no jurisdiction over my historically exempt property. All fines were nullified, permits reinstated, and a formal warning was issued regarding filing fraudulent documents. The room exploded in cheers. People were hugging, a true community victory. Within 2 weeks, Alara's Obsidian SUV was gone and her house was on the market. Clara told me she had moved to the estates at Willowbrook, the most notoriously restrictive, rule-obsessed, HOA micromanaged subdivision in the entire county. The perfect poetic justice. She finally got to live under the exact authoritarian control she had tried to impose on us. My family's victory became a victory for the community. We held a huge celebratory barbecue, and I dedicated a small bronze plaque in the Heritage Garden, Silas Hayes Memorial Garden, defending the right to land and legacy. Since 1971. The very last twist, the one that makes me look over my shoulder sometimes, came exactly 1 year later. I got a call from a man who introduced himself as Ilara's cousin, informing me she had died in a car accident. He was handling her estate, and she had left a package for me, with explicit instructions for its delivery. "She said it would finish what she started," he whispered, his voice shaking. The package arrived 2 days later, heavy, wrapped in brown paper, sealed with layers of tape. I'm holding it right now. As I finish telling you this story, wondering what kind of final, malicious phase she could have possibly planned from beyond the grave. Her hatred was clearly deeper than any property line. So here's my question to you all. When does a personal grudge stop being about justice and start becoming tyranny? And if you were me holding this package, would you open it? Let me know in the comments below and share your own stories of fighting bureaucratic bullies and winning or losing your piece of the dream. Like and share if you think the quiet support of a neighbor is stronger than any HOA bylaw.